And welcome back to Real Talk Sports with Rico. Today, I will be your host. Today's show, we are actually doing a preview of Week 18, the final season into the NFL. As we get ready to step into the playoffs next weekend, it'll be wild card weekend. So excited to bring you guys this content. Let me first and foremost thank our platforms, which is going to be Anchor, which is now Spotify Podcasts, where you can check out the podcast there. You can also find us on YouTube at Real Talk Sports with Rico. Both of those links are going to be in the show notes below. I just want to go ahead and thank the sponsors out there who have put sponsorship on the show and the fans out there. We so thank you very much for actually listening to the comments and actually going ahead and actually putting comments to the content as well, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Hopefully I can get this pod out to you by at least the first or second quarter here in today's games, guys. So I've got some graphics up for you. I'm just going to be talking briefly, loosely about some of these games, what the implication is going into the playoffs, my thoughts and predictions here. So let me go ahead and throw the graphics up here, and let us start off here with the Atlanta Falcons and then also to the New Orleans Saints here. So look, both teams still have a chance to actually make the playoffs here. And I think that the bottom line for this is that the Saints probably are the more realistic choice in this particular football game. I just think that when you're looking at the New Orleans Saints, essentially the one thing to really point out in this one is that the Falcons are 2-6 on the road. They have to come to New Orleans today. I just feel like even though David Carr has not necessarily been an upgrade to Andy Dalton, he's getting it done at this point in time. It is going to be a bit more dicey. Alvin Kamara is questionable in this one, who I think has to have a big factor if the Saints wanted to make noise in the first place. The wide receiver room is still decimated. You're still going with Chris Olave. They don't have Michael Thompson, who's been out for the year. I still think it's going to be some ugly football. There could still be some magic here with Tyler Heineke, who is questionable. And I just think Atlanta just has so many holes as a team here. I like the Saints to win this football game. I think it's going to be probably a 20-17 game, but I think that the Saints take care of business. Next up, how about those Buccaneers? And I have got to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today. I think that my boy, and I'm going to say not my boy, but I'm going to say what Devontae, the real Hogan's boy is, Baker Mayfield, he is going to ride the ship today. He is going to have the Pirates ship riding high against the Carolina Panthers, who just got blown out 26-0 in this one. This is huge for Baker Mayfield. I think that this solidifies Baker Mayfield going into next season. I think he'll get a better extension. I think he gets the money here. I think that Todd Bowles has something to go out there to management and say, hey, this is our guy moving forward. Even if we go draft a guy for the future, Baker Mayfield is our guy for right now. I think that you're going to have a special game from Mike Evans, and then also too Chris Godwin is going to get off in this one. The Bucs won the first meeting 21-18. I feel like even in Carolina, they just came off the loss. I think it gets even worse for Carolina. I think that this is going to be a 28-17 game. They come back from that horrible 23-13 loss against the Saints last week. Next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. So for this one, I think that the Minnesota Vikings have a slither of hope to make the playoffs, but I think that the Lions pounce on the Vikings, close the door on the Vikings and their playoff hopes today. And I think that Detroit really goes ahead and establishes themselves as a real contender in this one. And I don't want to hear the noise that, yes, they got manhandled by CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott last week. I get it. They actually won that football game if you look at the call that went against them. But the one thing that I will say about the Detroit Lions is they have gotten to where they have gotten to because Dan Campbell has brought a level of physicality to this football team. And they are an established man coverage team. That's what they like to play. They do not like to play zone. And I love it. They love for their front four to come up and smack you in the mouth. And that's how they play football. They do not play conservative. So because of that, I do not think that Justin Jefferson is going to come in and be a huge factor in today's game like CeeDee Lamb was. And obviously, they blew it with the quarterback switch. They really haven't been able to find it, Minnesota, that is. They're going with Nick Mullins, who has been a little bit more established in this league, had some time with San Francisco, had some spurts here with the Minnesota Vikings. I just think, ultimately speaking, the Detroit Lions are still pissed from last week. I think they're going to come in. They're going to get some momentum going into the playoffs. I expect for the Lions to go ahead and handle business here against the Vikings. Next up, the next game coming up here for this exciting Week 18 is the New York Jets and the New England Patriots. It is at Gillette Stadium, and a lot of people feel like that this could be Coach Belichick's last game as a Patriot. A lot of people would like to see him ride off into the sunset, and I'm not happening. The Jets are going to win this football game. I think that the bottom line is this. Coach, for the Jets here, they want to have something huge going into the offseason. Obviously, I think that they're going to part ways with Zach Wilson here. Perhaps they'll get some draft capital, swindle a team into giving up some draft picks for Zach Wilson. And I think, ultimately speaking, they're thinking to themselves, we're going to get Aaron Rodgers back here. We feel like there's a possibility that we can add around Aaron Rodgers. And there is talk that possibly Devontae Adams comes over from the Las Vegas Raiders to the Jets here. Suddenly that becomes a very intriguing team, but I think that this is going to be JETSS. The Jets are going to win today in Gillette Stadium. Next up, you have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. So here's the deal. Okay, so the offensive line for the Jaguars is terrible. And Charles Barkley's version, terrible. I'll try to get that out. But they're terrible. And look, Trevor Lawrence has not had a special year this year. And I think mainly it is because the wide receivers have not been healthy. But they do get Christian Kirk back, who has been out for a handful of weeks. He has targeted this football game. I think he comes back at the perfect timing for Trevor Lawrence, who is coming off a shoulder injury here. Now, Christian Kirk is going to be the first option. I feel like Evan Ingram is going to be their next option, who has had a pretty fair year at the tight end. You know how I feel about players who get the bag and then they come out and play terrible after that. Ingram has actually gotten the bag, played exceptionally well. You look at that. You look at the fact that they're going to have Travis Etienne Jr. playing in this football game as well. I think that they're going to be able to establish a tempo here. And I think really the X factor here is Calvin Ridley. The Titans have given up huge plays in the secondary. Sometimes I often wonder as I watch the tape, the cornerbacks look like they are covering blades of grass versus wide receivers. So I feel like you're going to see a lot of free range for the Jacksonville Jaguars and their receiving core today. I feel like Trevor Lawrence and the Tennessee Titans, and his wide receiver staff against the Tennessee Titans will get it done today. I feel like the Jaguars win this one. Again, I think this is going to be a 27 to probably 17 game. I know it is a little bit more of a divisional game, but I think that Jacksonville is going to take care of business here. Next up, guys, we have the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. Even though the Cleveland Browns are coming into Cincinnati and they're resting a ton of starters, I feel like, man, the Cleveland Browns are going to win this game. Even though, they have a guy at quarterback that has not really had necessarily a lot of success in this league, but I just feel like Cleveland, the physicality, where they're at, I think mentally, even though they could win the 12th game and essentially have one of the best records that they've had since 1986, going back to when I think Bernie Kosar played quarterback. Man, I'm dating myself just thinking about that. But anyhow, with the Cleveland Browns, I think that their level of physicality, the way that they like to smack you in the mouth, they kind of have that same kind of swagger as the Detroit Lions this year, where I really feel like they have something to prove. And I think with Coach Stefanski, the way that he's come out and coached up Cleveland has been admirable. I think a lot of people thought that they were really going to pack it in when Nick Chubbs went down, and they've just turned it up. And look, they have had a special season. I think that even though Jeff Driscoll will start here for Cleveland, I think that essentially they're still going to get this done in Cincinnati. And I think that they're going to set themselves up for a good playoff run. Next up, guys, the next game here is going to be the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. And man, this is tough. This is a true divisional game, and I want to say that I want to go with the Green Bay Packers, but a lot of me wants to go with the Chicago Bears. Like, I feel like when you look at what Justin Fields is showing, and I think it's one of those things with Justin Fields is he really wants to leave a mark out there for the Chicago Bears that if you do not build around me and you elect to trade me, it's going to be one of the biggest mistakes in franchise history. Okay. And I've been on the Justin Fields bandwagon. Being a Washington Commanders fan, I would love to have Justin Fields as my quarterback because I'm telling you, Justin Fields, when you look at him on tape last week with the way he was throwing darts out there, I mean, this guy, he must have had a lot of change in his pocket because he was dropping dimes out there on wide receivers, just dropping it in the breadbasket. I mean, he was money out there, and that was just on his dropbacks. I'm not even talking about where he was dropping back and he had to be a bit of an elusive player, kind of like what you see with Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick in the day, some of the more elusive quarterbacks. He has that ability, and he has now, I think, improved his accuracy here. This is going to be a tough game against Green Bay, who I want to remind everybody, Green Bay, as good as they played last week against Minnesota, they have given up tons and tons and tons of points. It's almost like you're playing a pinball machine with the amount of points that the Green Bay Packers have given up here. I do not like this with the hot Bears coming in here. I think that they finish at 8-9, because I think they're 7-9 going into this one. I like Chicago to pull off the upset, and I think Green Bay still gets in. Yeah, we'll see about that one. Next up, the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. I like them Raiders. I really do. I think that Coach Antonio Pierce, who I loved him as a player. I think he also played for Washington at one point as a linebacker, but more importantly, played for the Giants, was on their Super Bowl winning team. And he is definitely a coach that if I was in the NFL and if I was a player, I think I want to play for him because he is absolutely a player's coach. He is the kind of guy that he doesn't care about these sophisticated X's and O's. He is a bottom line type of guy. And you know what he said offensively? He said, look, I'm not a silly coach, and it's not like was born yesterday. I know that I have got to get Davante Adams the football, and he has done that. And he's done something where other coaches have really failed to do so. And that's what I love about it. And when you listen to the players like Davante Adams, like Crosby, they want to play for Antonio Pierce. I think that this is a statement game for the Las Vegas Raiders at home in front of the faithful. I think that they show everybody here that, hey, we're for real. We think that Antonio Pierce is our guy. We want to build around this guy. They finish at 8-9. They make the offseason even tougher for the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton, who I said, if you check out the shorts here on the channel, I don't think that Sean Payton is going to be around very much longer with the treatment of, Russell Wilson and how he went about that business. And I just think that he is not the guy to be there that is going to build a franchise up. I think he's a guy that is very much a turnkey guy. And I'm not sure he's going to be around once he starts to tear this thing down. And so I think that they end terribly here. I don't think Jarrett Stidham is able to come back home and get the dub here. Next up here, guys, the next game that we have on deck for you is the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. And this is very interesting because there's history on the line. If the Eagles win this, the Eagles would be the first team in quite some time to actually repeat as the NFC champion. If they lose, then that means that the NFC East once again would be handed over to a new winner here, which is very interesting about this. And so when I look at this one, I think that they are going to play a feisty New York Giants team. No doubt about it that I want to go on record, and I think that Tyrod Taylor is a starter in this league. I think he should be in serious considerations for the Giants here because I'm not sold on Daniel Jones. So whoever needs a quarterback and you don't want to go draft one, you might want to give Mr. Taylor a call. Now, he's going to be very exciting. Look at what he did last week. He actually threw the ball down the field. Hello, New York. If you can just go out and get a wide receiver and get a quarterback like that, you might have some more wins in the win column. All right, so you already have a good running back. I think Saquon Barkley is going to play hard. I think he's going to make a ton of plays here. Against, I'm going to say, a very bad Philadelphia Eagles defense, which a lot of people are looking at the losses, and I want to be frank here. The Eagles are not losing because of the offense. Jalen Hurts has been outstanding. The problem has been defensively. And yes, I know that they have Coach Patricia there coming over from the Lions, coming over from the Patriots, but they haven't been that much better. They have still given up 26 plus points, and they have really only given up about 10 fewer points with him at the helm. And they have gone against some terrible offensive clubs and still lost. Look at the embarrassing loss that they have last week against the Cardinals here. So really, this is a chance, I think, for the Eagles to ride the ship here. Would, Coach Sirianni pull starters? Possibly. If they're looking at the scoreboard and they're up a whole bunch, yeah, they might. But I think he wants to build some momentum going into the playoffs, and he really wants to ride the ship. But I don't know what you can do to light the fire on the defensive end of the ball. And I know, yes, Jalen Hurts has struggled against zero coverages or zero coverage plays, which is basically what that means is that you have an all-out blitz, man-on-man, stuff like that. I don't care. Throw all that out the window. You still have A.J. Brown. You're still going to have Devontae Smith. You still have DeAndre Swift playing running back. The Eagles are going to figure that side of the ball out. They need to figure out the defensive side of the ball first. But I like the Eagles to win this game and ultimately possibly win this division. Next up, the Rams against the San Francisco 49ers. All I really have to say is that the Rams are starting Carson Wentz and they're resting a whole bunch of other starters. Because of that, even though San Francisco is going to be without Purdy and without McCaffrey, I still think that the San Francisco 49ers are going to win this football game. I do not think that the Rams are going to rally around Carson Wentz. I think you're going to see some rust here. I like the San Francisco 49ers to win this football game. And with that being said, guys, that is the preview for this week's games. Let me go ahead and throw some shout outs to some players and some teams and some games where credit is due. And let us start here with the game that I predicted. I thought the Texans were going to win last night 28-24. They actually win 23-17. And CJ Stroud getting it done, the Texans getting it done. And I know that this absolutely makes the Panthers fans sick. And also to any team in the NFL, hello, if you see a guy that you think is going to be an elite quarterback, trade for him. Go get him. That's what the Texans did. They believed in CJ Stroud from the beginning. They believed in Coach Ryans coming home, who has been a Pro Bowler for this very Texans franchise. Kudos to the Texans for getting it right all across the board. I'm so very proud of the Texans, man. And I'm like so proud of CJ Stroud, who I want to say is the most successful Ohio State quarterback that I have ever seen play in the NFL in my days here. So, I briefly want to go ahead and give them their flowers as they have actually solidified a ticket. Tough one for Gardner Minshew here. Had a chance, had a 4th and 1 drop. I mean, if he just could have let him, threw it behind my guy, but tough one for Gardner Minshew. And another guy that I think, hello, if you need to see a starting quarterback, go get him. Gardner Minshew, he's there for you. Next up, let me go ahead and give the Pittsburgh Steelers their flowers, guys. Mike Tomlin holding it together, going through three quarterbacks here this season, whether it was Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, he had Mason Randolph, or Rudolph, excuse me, and they have come out here and they have played lights out football here in the last month. And I am very scared to see the Pittsburgh Steelers because of the physicality that they play with on the defensive end. Now, it does scare me a little bit here because it is reported, if you were watching the game, that TJ Watt, who is up there with the sacks, I believe he leads actually defensive players in having multiple sack games. I believe he has 22 in his career. He actually leads guys like Myles Garrett, Javon Clowney, was Aaron Donald, Cameron Jordan over in the Saints. So, I mean, that is elite company right there. So you're losing a multiple sack kind of guy in TJ Watt, and it looks like he's probably not going to play with that torn MCL. So that's going to be a huge void for them. But still, there's enough guys out there to make plays. And let's not forget, guys, just a couple seasons removed, the Pittsburgh Steelers were undefeated going into like week 12 or something like that with Ben Roethlisberger before it all fell apart for them. So this team is very well coached. Key aspect, what I just said, listen to me, they're very well coached, okay? Because of that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have a lot of heart. Don't come to that arena thinking that you are just going to walk over the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is not going to happen. Expect for them to really hand somebody the business in the playoffs. And I'm calling it right now. Whoever the Pittsburgh Steelers have to play is going to be a dogfight. On the other side of this thing with the Ravens rested a ton of people. It was terrible conditions here. I've got the Madden 2024 gameplay up playing right now if you're looking at the actual podcast here visually, guys. And so it was nasty like that. It was like a mix of rain and kind of snow, super windy. I think it was like the wind was like up to like 10 to 20 miles an hour, it looked like out there. Tough for the refs. I mean, you see everything blowing all over the place. And it was one of those games where it was tough to throw the football, a type of game where I think both teams would like to win it. The level of physicality was there for the Steelers because they forced a lot of turnovers. And I just think that with Lamar Jackson coming back, they're going to have a chance to get Mark Andrews back. I love that Isaiah Likely had a huge game in this one here. And I think that that's going to bode well for the Ravens' confidence in the passing game. Remember, the one reason that I've always picked really against Baltimore is because they didn't really have necessarily a downfield threat. And I mean, I know that they've had Anquan Bolden back in the day. They've had Jacoby Jacobs, I think, that used to play wide receiver there, talented out of Florida State, I believe. Super fast. I'd have to go back and look at that. But he was on their team in their last Super Bowl, I think, where the Ravens actually – yeah, they did. They won that Super Bowl. That's the one where the lights went out. So, they just really haven't had a talented wide receiver core until now. And one thing I want to throw out there is that they went out and got their guy in Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is the first rookie to lead in passing yards and receptions on a number one seed in NFL history. That's how good Zay Flowers has been. So I know he is set out with the calf injury. Guys, I talk about the calf injury and how tricky that is because the calf is something where it feels good. You have great practices, and then the calf can just go suddenly. And so that's the one thing that's a little bit scary for you. Odell Beckham, he's had some questionable leg injuries as of late, even with the Baltimore Ravens. So with a full healthy staff here, I think that they're going to be able to go out there and have a good passing game. The question now is that I'm not sure that they're really sold on Gus Edwards, and I don't think that they really found a complement in Melvin Gordon. Now, they did get Delvin Cook over there, and you're wondering how quickly he can come up to speed, because I think that he is going to be that excellent change of pace back that they are going to need if Coach Harbaugh and those guys want to advance into the playoffs, guys. And briefly, before we get out of here, guys, let us go over some of the playoff pictures here as we get ready to go off and get into this week 18. And if you're checking out the show, guys, right now, essentially it is into the first quarter of the games at this point in time. So let me go ahead and get ready to throw that up for you guys. And so here we go. So looking at the playoffs thus far, guys, you have the Baltimore Ravens, who are the number 1 seed at 13-4. You have Miami, who essentially could be the number 2 seed if they win today. If they lose, Buffalo would actually be the number 2 seed. Kansas City right now locked in at the 3rd seed. I think that they're going to take care of business against the Chargers here, who basically have people starting off the streets, basically. I mean, they essentially are a decimated roster, been the most disappointing in the NFL, and they have absolutely pretty much no starter starting today. So I think Kansas City takes care of business there. Houston went ahead and executed, got into the playoffs. They're 10-7. Cleveland, I think, is going to win today. They're 11-5, currently in the wild card, the top spot. Buffalo, I just talked about, they could be the 2nd seed. And Pittsburgh right now, they're in, barring what happens to Jacksonville, to see if they're going to get into where Buffalo is or not. They're going to need a little help. We'll see what happens there. The NFC East, you have San Francisco as the 1 seed at 12-4. Dallas could be the 2 seed, could slide down. They're both 11-5, with Dallas playing Washington today. I think that Dallas, the key for them is going to be defense. I feel like Micah Parsons is probably going to have an absolute highlight reel on Washington, who probably is going to fire Ron Rivera here in the offseason. Hello, Coach Bieniemy. It's time to be a head coach. Just saying. But I think that Dallas is going to go ahead and they're actually going to win this game handedly. And I think Philadelphia is going to win this game. So I'm curious to see. I don't know. I think maybe Philly has the tiebreaker. Have to go back and do a little bit more research, but questionable. The 2 seed is up in the air. Detroit, I think, is clearly locked down the 3rd seed. Tampa Bay, I think, is going to go ahead and lock it in today as the divisional winner. I have them. They're 8-8 as a division winner. Wild cards right now, we got Philadelphia at the top. You got the Rams next, and then you have the Green Bay Packers. Depending on what happens with Seattle and Arizona, man, a lot of me wants to say that Arizona wants to play the spoilers. I think that Coach Carroll is an excellent coach in these situations, and he is a championship coach dating back to his USC days. I think that he has Geno Smith and he has the Seattle Seahawks ready to play in a feisty environment where they are visiting the Arizona Cardinals. I like Seattle to run the football very well. I think that Geno Smith executes. I think that he wants to solidify himself more as a starter in this league, get Seattle into the playoffs here. So I like them to go ahead and secure a wild card spot. And so with that being said, guys, that is today's content. I just want to go ahead and thank Spotify for being our actual platform for the podcast. You can check us out there. You can check us out at Real Talk Sports with Rico on our YouTube channel, and all those links in the show are going to be below. And I just want to go ahead and so thank the fans out there who have actually watched the content. You've commented on the content as well. It has actually helped us go ahead and drive topics to the show. And lastly, the sponsors out there who have put sponsorship on the show. And so for myself, this is Rico. This is Real Talk Sports. I hope you guys enjoy Week 18 of the NFL season. I cannot wait to talk to you guys about the playoffs here next week. I got a lot of content for you guys. So I'll see you on the next one. And this is Rico, Real Talk Sports. All right, guys. Peace.